She only helps because she owes us." My mother's voice, sharp with contempt, played on the shaky video my Uncle Jason had secretly recorded. "After everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do." Thomas, my younger brother, smirked on the screen. "Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us some huge favor. What a joke." And then came the quiet nod from my father, the same man who once taught me to ride a bike and stayed up late helping me through high school math, silently agreeing as they tore me down. That silence hurt worse than the words. Before I go on, if you're new here, subscribe and stay with me till the end. What happened next isn't just about betrayal, it's about how one hidden clause in a mortgage turned the tables in ways my family never saw coming. I watched the video 3 times that night. Each replay filled me with a strange mix of numbness and clarity. For the past 4 years, I had been making the bulk of their mortgage payments through my LLC, Divine Investments. They thought they were making payments to a bank, never once reading the fine print of the agreement my advisor had drafted. Every month they sent in their small share, while I quietly covered the rest, over $200,000 in total. They never knew, and still they mocked me for barely helping. When Uncle Jason sent me that video, his message was short. "You needed to see this, Lindsay. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months." I sat in my Phoenix home office, surrounded by spreadsheets and bank records, staring at undeniable proof of my sacrifices. My hands should have been trembling with anger, but they were steady as I pulled up the mortgage contract. And there it was, an option clause my financial advisor, Kate, had suggested years ago. "Just in case," she'd said when we set it up. Looking back, I wonder if she suspected my family might someday betray me. The clause was simple. If my parents ever defaulted, Divine Investments could exercise its right to purchase the home outright. The house would become mine. The next payment was due in 2 weeks. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do. I typed a calm reply to my uncle. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know it came from you, but things are about to change." I wasn't always this resolved. 4 years earlier, when the housing market in Phoenix crashed, my parents were on the verge of losing the home they'd lived in for 2 decades. I was 27 then, already established as a software development manager. They had never respected that career choice. "Software isn't a real career for a woman," my mother used to say, lips pursed in disapproval. "Your brother Thomas is the one with real business sense." That business sense of his had nearly bankrupted my father's real estate company in 2 years. Still, when their mortgage crisis hit, they turned to me. Kate, my advisor, suggested a solution that protected everyone's pride. Create an LLC, buy the house through it, and let them think they're still paying a bank. That way you help them without having to fight their egos, and you protect yourself legally. It worked. For 4 years, Divine Investments became their silent savior. They thought they were making full payments when in reality their checks covered just a fraction. I quietly paid the remaining $5,400 every month. The only person who knew was Uncle Jason, who'd overheard me discussing it with Kate once. I remember his words. "You're too good to them, Lindsay. They don't deserve that kind of kindness." I defended my parents then. "They may not understand my choices, but they're still my family. They've given me a home." I clung to that belief until the video proved otherwise. The video wasn't the end of it. The next day, Jason sent me screenshots from a group chat my family had created behind my back. Its name made me sick. Family Finances. Thomas. "Lindsay thinks she's so special with her tech job. She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here keeping Dad's business alive." My mother. "We should ask her for more money. She's single, no kids. What else does she spend it on? After all we sacrificed, she owes us. I stared at those words while my financial records glared back from my desk. $267,843 from me, $52,500 from them. That was the truth of our shared mortgage. They wanted more when I had already given everything. That night, my phone buzzed. It was my mother, ever the actress. "Sweetie, could you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to discuss something important." I didn't have to guess what important meant. They were about to ask for even more money, probably served with guilt and manipulation as side dishes. I called Kate. "I need to know my options on that purchase clause." She didn't sound surprised. "I figured this might happen someday. If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can exercise ownership immediately. You'd have full legal claim, and they'd be downgraded to tenants. Tenants in what they thought was their own home. A plan began to form in my mind. Sunday dinner came. The house looked the same as always, sunset spilling orange and purple over Phoenix, my mother's lasagna filling the kitchen with nostalgic warmth. But I saw it differently now. This wasn't our family home. It was a property I owned, one they had been mocking me for saving. Thomas sat at the table in his usual business casual, smug as ever. My father shuffled papers, statements, no doubt rehearsing his pitch. Before the lasagna cooled, my mother launched into it. "We've been thinking, sweetheart. The mortgage has become a burden. With you doing so well in your computer work, software development," I corrected. They never got it right. She waved it off. Right. We thought perhaps you could help more. Just an extra $2,000 a month." $2,000 more? When they didn't even know I was already paying over $5,000. I forced a smile. "I'll think about it." Thomas snorted. "We all know you're fine, unlike some of us who actually work hard to keep this family's legacy alive." I met his eyes. "You're right, Thomas. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve." Later, I accidentally overheard them talking in my father's study. Their words chilled me. "She's hiding money in some company called Divine Investments," my father said. "If she won't help, we'll use what we know about her college tuition stunt," my mother added. Thomas chimed in coldly. "And if that fails, we'll call her HR, question her stability, maybe suggest she's stealing company resources." They weren't just ungrateful. They were plotting to destroy me. That night, I drafted an eviction notice and tucked it neatly into my desk drawer. The payment was due in 13 days. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them. For the first time, I was ready. Sunday dinner was always supposed to feel like home. But that evening, as I walked into my parents' Phoenix house, I couldn't see it as home anymore. It was a property, a liability, a house whose survival rested on my steady hand for years, yet one they mocked me for saving. The familiar scent of lasagna drifted from the oven, a deliberate choice by my mother to soften me, to remind me of childhood dinners where love was measured in casseroles and carefully timed smiles. She pulled me into a hug, her designer bracelet catching the light. It was new, probably paid for with money that should have gone toward the mortgage due in 9 days. "Sweetheart," she said warmly, squeezing my shoulders, "it means so much that you're here." If only she knew the things I knew now. Thomas sat at the dining table, smug in his pressed shirt, sipping red wine like the king of a crumbling empire. My father hovered nearby, adjusting his reading glasses as he pretended to study some papers. Bank statements. I caught the header as he shuffled them. He was rehearsing their pitch, no doubt. We sat down. I forced a smile as I served myself lasagna, though the food turned to ash in my mouth. "Before we eat," my mother began, "we wanted to talk about something important." She glanced at my father, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. I kept my tone calm. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Thomas leaned back, clearing his throat with unnecessary drama. "Well, as you know, Dad's business has been facing some challenges. Challenges? That was one way to describe the disaster my brother had made of our father's once stable real estate company. The market isn't what it used to be, my father added, in a tone of paternal authority that once could shrink me into silence. I chewed slowly, not rising to the bait. The Phoenix real estate market was thriving, just not under Thomas's reckless mismanagement. My mother reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. We've been thinking about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter. Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you a good education. There it was, the old script. Guilt, sacrifice, obligation, all wrapped in a loving performance. She pressed on. The mortgage has become quite a burden. We thought perhaps you could help more. Just an extra $2,000 a month. It isn't much, considering your salary. I paused, letting the silence stretch, pretending to consider. $2,000, a mere fraction of the $5,000 I was already paying every month without their knowledge. I'll think about it, I said finally, keeping my voice neutral. Thomas snorted. We all know you're fine, unlike some of us who are actually working hard to keep this family's legacy alive. I looked him straight in the eye, the corners of my lips curving into a smile. You're right, Thomas. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve. He frowned, not understanding the weight of those words. Later that evening, after pushing food around my plate and enduring more small talk than I could stomach, I excused myself to the bathroom. On the way, I passed my father's study. The door was ajar, their voices carried out in sharp whispers. She's not going to help, Thomas said bitterly. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money? Patience, my father replied. We have another option. Remember those documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi? That company, Divine Investments, she's been hiding money from us there. My stomach dropped. They had snooped. Carelessly, during my last visit, I had used their Wi-Fi. My cloud storage must have synced automatically. They had gone through my private files. I looked it up, my father continued. It's a legitimate LLC. She's squirreling money away instead of helping her family. My mother's voice dripped venom. I raised a snake. If she won't help voluntarily, I'll remind her about the tuition money she stole in college. She thought we never knew. We'll use it to force her hand. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. That stolen money had been a loan my father himself had approved when their check for my tuition bounced. I'd paid it back in full with interest within a month. I still had the emails proving it. Their attempt at blackmail was pathetic. Thomas chimed in. And if that doesn't work, we can always reach out to her HR. Ask questions about her stability. Suggest she's been stealing company resources for personal projects. That would get their attention. The casual cruelty in his voice sent ice through my veins. This wasn't a family. These were predators wearing familiar faces. I stepped back silently, my heart pounding, but my expression calm as I flushed the toilet for show and returned to the dining room. They followed a few minutes later, all wearing practiced smiles. Lindsay, dear, my mother said sweetly, have you given more thought to what we asked? I met her gaze steadily. Actually, I have. You're right. Family should help family. I'll have an answer for you in about 8 days. Her face softened with satisfaction. We knew you'd understand. Family always comes first. Yes, I said, rising from the table, gathering my purse. Family always gets exactly what they deserve. None of them caught the edge in my voice. As I drove home through the quiet Phoenix streets, my mind was already working. 8 days. That wasn't a random number. It was the day their next mortgage payment was due. The day I planned to stop being their safety net. When I got home, I pulled out the eviction notice I had drafted and placed it neatly in my desk drawer. My hands didn't shake. For once, I felt steady. Over the next week, their pressure campaign began in earnest. Daily texts filled with carefully crafted guilt trips. Sweetheart, times are tough. Don't forget, we're family. Your brother works so hard for this family. The least you can do is step up. We need to know we can rely on you. Each message I forwarded to Kate, my advisor, who was already preparing the legal documents. The paperwork is ready, she told me during our call. If they miss the payment, Divine Investments exercises ownership. It's airtight. And if they refuse rent after, Arizona law is clear. We can proceed with eviction. I nodded, staring at the files on my desk. And you're sure everything's legally sound? They can't fight this. They signed the agreement 4 years ago, she reminded me. Your father barely skimmed it. He was too desperate for the bailout. Everything is in order. That reassurance steadied me even more. Thomas tried his own brand of manipulation. One evening, I received a text dripping with mockery. Hey sis, heard from a friend that some tech companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary for you. Good thing you have family to fall back on. Speaking of which, about that help we discussed. I almost laughed. The irony of him, jobless, running a failing business, dependent on me, warning me about layoffs. The next day, over coffee with Uncle Jason, I showed him the text. He shook his head slowly. They never change. They did this to me once too, to your cousin as well, always digging for leverage, always looking for ways to use people. I sipped my coffee, my resolve hardening. Are you ready for the fallout? He asked quietly. Yes, I said without hesitation. I've been ready for years. 2 days before the payment deadline, my mother called. Lindsay, we need your answer. Times are tough. Family needs to stick together. I let the silence stretch before replying evenly. Don't worry, Mum. Everything will be clear very soon. That night, I received an email from their bank. Their attempted transfer to Divine Investments had bounced. They were already overdrawn. I forwarded the message to Kate. Here we go, she replied. Want me to initiate proceedings tomorrow? No, I typed back. Let them think everything's fine. Let them breathe easy for 2 more days, then let it all fall. Timing was everything, and they had taught me timing well. 8 days doesn't sound like much time, but when you're watching your family unravel, it feels like a lifetime. Every morning, I woke up to another round of messages, calls I ignored, texts I archived. They alternated between sweetness and venom, like gamblers trying every trick to win back the house they were losing hand over fist. Sweetheart, you know we love you. Don't let money come between us. 5 minutes later. If you can't step up when family needs you, maybe you're not really family at all. I stopped responding entirely. Silence was my sharpest weapon, and they had no idea how to fight it. But behind the quiet, I was moving. Every day, another piece fell into place. Kate, my advisor, called me on Tuesday morning. Her voice was brisk, efficient, but I could hear the edge of admiration in it. You know, she said, most people in your situation would cave by now. Emotional leverage works 90% of the time. They raised me on emotional leverage, I replied. I know every one of their plays. She laughed softly. Well, you're rewriting the game. We've double-checked the LLC structure. The property transfer was airtight. Once the payment defaults, Divine Investments assumes legal ownership. They can't claw their way out. And the eviction notice? It's drafted. All you'll have to do is sign. I closed my eyes, imagining the bold letters across the top of the document. Notice to vacate. A single sheet of paper that would carry the weight of years, no, decades, of manipulation. They're going to scream, I murmured. Yes, Kate agreed, but screaming doesn't pay the mortgage. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't help but remember other times they'd screamed. When I was 17 and asked why Thomas got a brand new Jeep for his birthday while I got a used Honda with 120,000 miles. My father's voice, low and sharp. Don't start. He's a boy. He needs to make an impression. When I was 32 and asked why they dipped into my savings by accident while managing Thomas's portfolio with kid gloves. My mother's wounded look. We thought you wouldn't mind. You've always had more than you need. When I was 45 and finally refused to co-sign Thomas's second mortgage, the cold silence lasted nearly a year, broken only when they needed me again. Each memory was another thread in the net they had tried to bind me with, but this time I had the scissors. By Thursday, their desperation boiled over. I walked out of my office building in downtown Phoenix to find Thomas leaning against my car, arms crossed. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Lindsay," he said tightly, "we need to talk." I didn't slow down. "Move." He straightened, his voice rising. "You think you're better than us, sitting on your high horse while we're drowning? You've been hoarding money for years. Dad told me everything." I stopped, turned, and met his gaze squarely. "If Dad told you everything, then you know exactly how this ends." For a moment, he faltered. Then his anger surged again. "You're going to regret this. Families don't forgive betrayal." "Neither do daughters," I said softly, before unlocking my car and sliding in. He slammed his fist against the hood as I drove away. That evening, Uncle Jason called. His voice was as hesitant, almost apologetic. "They've been talking to the family, Linz, spinning stories, saying you're cutting them out, abandoning them after everything they did for you. Some are starting to believe it." I exhaled slowly. "And you?" "I know the truth. I've seen what they've taken from you, but be ready. Sunday's dinner is going to be ugly." Sunday, 2 days before the payment deadline. The stage was being set whether I wanted it or not. "Thanks for the warning," I said. "Let them talk. I'm done playing defense." On Friday night, I sat at my kitchen table, papers spread before me. Bank statements, notarized transfers, emails from years ago, text messages dripping with guilt and threats, a mosaic of proof. Victor Hernandez, the forensic accountant, joined the call with Kate. His voice was precise, methodical. "I've traced the entire money trail," he explained. "You paid $118,745 over the last 4 years. All of it documented, all of it verifiable. You've more than carried this property." Kate added, "If they try to claim otherwise, these records will bury them, not just in court, but in the court of family opinion." I studied the numbers, the cold clarity of them. Numbers don't cry, numbers don't beg, numbers don't lie. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Saturday morning, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear her voice one last time before the storm broke. "Lindsay," she began, her tone syrupy sweet. "We've been so worried. We know you'll do the right thing. You've always been the responsible one." I stayed silent. "You wouldn't let your brother lose everything, would you? He's your only sibling. Imagine what people will say if you just stand by while we're ruined." Her words slid off me like rain on glass. "I don't have to imagine," I said finally. "I already know what people will say. They'll say the truth." Her breath caught. "What? The truth?" "The one you've spent decades hiding." I hung up before she could reply. Saturday night was restless. I lay awake, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, counting the hours. 48 hours until the payment deadline. 48 hours until the house slipped from their grasp into mine. I imagined them scrambling, calling banks, begging for extensions, maybe even trying to pawn jewelry to cover the shortfall. They wouldn't make it. The hole was too deep, the years of indulgence too heavy, and when the clock struck 0, there would be no lifeline, only consequences. Sunday arrived hot and bright, the Arizona sun unrelenting. I drove to my parents' house, not as a daughter, but as something sharper, an avenger, a woman carrying truth like a blade. Inside, the dining room was already full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, faces turned toward me with varying shades of curiosity and judgment. My parents stood at the head of the table, Thomas by their side, his jaw tight. I took my seat without a word. The lasagna was already steaming, the same tired performance of comfort. My father cleared his throat. Before we eat, we need to address something important. I looked around the table at the expectant faces. The stage was set. The silence before the first blow was almost sweet. The dining room air was thick, charged like the desert sky before a monsoon storm. Lasagna sat steaming on the table, but no one reached for it. Every eye was on me. The black sheep turned provider, the scapegoat turned judge. My father adjusted his glasses, shuffling a stack of papers that I knew were carefully chosen to tell only part of the story. Beside him, Thomas leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking as if he'd already won. My mother's hand rested theatrically on her chest, the eternal martyr, ready to weep at a moment's notice. "Family," my father began, his voice deep and deliberate. "We've always prided ourselves on sticking together in hard times, but lately there's been tension, misunderstandings." A few aunts and uncles nodded uncomfortably. They'd clearly been primed for this performance. "We've carried this house for decades," he continued. "But now, with the market shifting, we need help. And it seems certain members of this family," his eyes flicked toward me, "have forgotten what it means to be loyal." Thomas leaned forward, seizing the opening. "Lindsay has money stashed away. She could easily cover the mortgage. Instead, she's sitting back, letting us drown." A low murmur rippled through the room. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We never thought our own daughter would turn her back on us, after all we sacrificed for her." That was their cue, their rehearsed chorus. I let it play out, let the room fill with their version of events. Then slowly, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Are you done?" I asked calmly. The room went still. I laid the folder on the table and opened it, spreading out neatly organized documents, payment records, bank statements, notarized contracts, proof cold and undeniable. "These," I said, tapping the first stack, "are the mortgage payments I've been making for the last 4 years, a total of $118,745. Every cent documented. While you sat here crying poverty, I was paying your bills." Gasps fluttered around the table. "This," I continued, sliding forward another sheet, "is the agreement you signed, Dad, when you accepted the bailout, the one that transferred the property into Divine Investments, my company. You didn't read it carefully, but you signed. And now, unless you pay Monday's mortgage, the house is mine, legally, irrevocably." Thomas scoffed. "This is manipulation. You're twisting things." Victor Hernandez, the forensic accountant I'd brought as my silent backup, spoke for the first time. His calm, authoritative tone cut through the noise. "These are verified documents. I've reviewed them personally. The payments came directly from Lindsay's accounts. The trust of this house rests with Divine Investments. If they default, and they will, ownership shifts. It's not a matter of opinion. It's the law." My father's face drained of color. My mother's tissue fluttered to the floor. Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it again, his smirk finally cracking. Uncle Jason leaned forward, his expression hard. "So all this time, you let her carry the weight while you played the victims? And then you spun lies about her hoarding money?" Aunt Grace shook her head. "I believed you. I thought Lindsay was being cruel. But she's been saving you." Cousin Marcy, who'd always admired Thomas, whispered, "You lied to us." The tide was shifting. I could feel it. the momentum rolling away from them, washing over to me. For the first time in decades, I wasn't the outsider. I was the truth teller. My father slammed his fist on the table, desperate to reclaim control. "This is betrayal. Family doesn't drag family into court." I met his glare without flinching. Family doesn't steal from their children. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't blackmail. Whatever this is, it isn't family. Thomas sprang from his chair, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You think you've won? You'll regret this. You'll be alone. No one will stand by you when we're gone." Before I could answer, Megan, my cousin who had been quiet until now, stood. Her voice shook, but her words cut clear. "No, Thomas, you're the one who'll be alone. Lindsay has shown more loyalty than any of you. She carried this house while you bled it dry. She has my support." Another cousin chimed in. "And mine." Uncle Jason added firmly. "And mine." The room fractured, the lines redrawn. My parents and Thomas stood isolated, the loyal circle they'd counted on shrinking by the second. My mother whispered, "How could you do this to us?" I looked at her, my voice steady. "I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourselves. Actions have consequences, and tomorrow you'll face them." The meal dissolved into chaos. Some relatives left in silence, others stayed behind to comfort me. My parents retreated to the kitchen, whispering furiously, while Thomas stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I stayed seated, calm amid the storm. For once, I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth spoke louder than anything I could have shouted. Later, as the desert night settled and the house emptied, I drove home under a wide Arizona sky. The stars were sharp, unblinking, the kind of night that makes you feel both small and powerful at once. When I got home, an email was waiting. Their mortgage payment had failed again. Final notice. I forwarded it to Kate. "It's done," she wrote back. "Ownership transfers in the morning." I closed my laptop, exhaling slowly. It was over. Monday morning, the phone rang off the hook. My parents. Thomas. Then silence. They knew. At noon, Kate delivered the signed documents. Divine Investments now owned the house outright. My house. My choice what to do with it. Some might have sold it just for the satisfaction of erasing their fingerprints from the deed. But I chose differently. I converted it into a rental property, the income directed toward scholarships for women in tech. My quiet revenge, channeled into rebirth. A month later, at a family gathering I chose not to attend, I heard from Jason that my parents still lived in denial, blaming me for their downfall. Thomas had moved in with a friend. His pride were now sounded beyond repair. But I didn't care. For once, their voices no longer shaped me. At 60 years old, I had finally cut the last strings they held. I was free. And freedom, I realized, is the sweetest revenge of all.